The Ulm giant when stone meets brick. In the south of Germany, where the waters of the Danube carry their stories through picturesque valleys, lies the city of Ulm. It could have remained just one of the cozy corners of Bavaria if not for one detail that makes every passerby hold their breath and throw their heads so high that their eyes are dizzy. In the very center of the city, like a giant stone finger pointing into infinity, rises Ulm Cathedral. This is not just a church, it is a manifesto of human will. It is so colossal that no camera lens is able to fully absorb its grandeur, and the human eye refuses to believe in the reality of such a scale. The 161-meter giant, which for centuries has held the sky on its shoulders, has become a symbol of the city that gave the world the genius of Albert Einstein. And while Einstein solved the mysteries of space and time, Ulm Cathedral itself is proof that time is but sand when true faith and architectural genius take hold. The cathedral that never became a cathedral. Interestingly, despite its incredible size and familiar name of the cathedral, this building has never been the residence of a bishop. It is the largest parish church in the world, which was built not at the behest of the church authorities, but at the expense of free citizens. Conceived in 1377 as a Catholic temple in honor of the Virgin Mary, it became Lutheran in the 16th century, having survived the turbulent times of the Reformation. If you look closely at the facade of the cathedral, you can see the engineering cunning of the masters of the past. Although the towers and decorative elements are carved from noble sandstone, the main walls of the nave and choir are actually built of visible brick. That is why Ulm Cathedral is considered one of the largest brick buildings in the world, holding the lead together with the churches of Gdansk and Munich. 5 centuries of waiting from Catholicism to the Reformation. The history of this masterpiece began back in 1377. Ulm was then a wealthy imperial city, and its residents decided to build something that would overshadow all the surrounding cathedrals. According to the plan, it was supposed to be a majestic Catholic church, but the history of Europe made its own adjustments. When the waves of the Reformation swept across Germany, the cathedral lost its fate and passed to the Lutherans. Tired of being subordinate to a distant monastery and constant threats, 10,000 residents of the city made a bold decision to build a new independent church right in the center at their own expense. On June 30, Mayor Ludwig Kraft laid the first stone, and everyone came out to build. Even the women of the city helped lay the foundation. Initially, the architects from the Parlor family planned a whole church, but the ambitions of the townspeople grew faster than the walls. They wanted the highest spire in the world. To balance such a gigantic tower, the height of the nave had to be significantly raised, which forever changed the proportions of the church. However, the path to the top was incredibly thorny. Lack of money, political strife, and exhausting wars led to the fact that for more than 300 years Ulm Cathedral stood unfinished, like an abandoned giant waiting for its revival. Only 513 years after the laying of the first stone in 1890 was the cross finally erected above the city on the highest spire. It was not just a ceremony, it was a victory of spirit over circumstances. 5 centuries of patience for the sake of one moment of triumph. Engineering drama, step to disaster. Ulm's history is not only a triumph, but also a struggle against mistakes. At the end of the 15th century, the architect Matthias Berblinger almost made a fatal mistake. He loaded the columns with vaults that were too heavy. The cathedral began to crack. The situation was saved by the master Burkhard Engelberg, who literally pulled the building out of the precipice, strengthening the foundation of the tower and replacing the heavy structures with lighter ones. However, the scars remained. Even today, the north wall of the cathedral protrudes 27 centimeters outward, reminding us of how fragile greatness can be. Construction stopped in 1543 at the 100-meter mark. The world changed, the Reformation made Ulm Protestant, and the discovery of America by Columbus and new sea routes by Magellan shifted trade axes. The city's economy faded, and the unfinished giant fell asleep for 3 long centuries. Mystical code, numbers, and masons. Among Gothic scholars, there is a theory that Ulm Cathedral is a giant stone book of encrypted knowledge. It is said that the architects from the Parlour family belonged to secret lodges and laid the golden ratio and numerological codes in the proportions of the temple. Local legend claims that if you multiply the number of steps by the height of the main spire and divide by the number of windows, you will get the date when the world will face a great cataclysm. Some even looked for the number of the beast on the bas-reliefs, believing that the cathedral is not only a house of prayer, but also a talisman that restrains otherworldly forces under the foundation, where an underground tributary of the Danube flows. The architects cursed the price of height. It is said that each of the cathedral's chief builders left a part of their soul here literally. There is a dark myth about Matthias Berblinger, the same man whose calculations nearly brought the cathedral down. It is said that when he realized his mistake, he made a deal with the dark forces to keep the walls standing. But the price was a halt to construction for hundreds of years. Legend has it that Berblinger's spirit still wanders the galleries at a height of 140 meters. The builders working on the restoration sometimes hear the hammering of a hammer where no one is. They believe that it is the ghost of the master trying to correct his mistakes in the stone that he did not have time to complete during his lifetime. The final portion, 768 steps. For those who want to see the world from a bird's eye view, the cathedral has prepared a real test. The observation deck on the spire opens a breathtaking panorama. In clear weather, the snow-capped Alps loom on the horizon, looking like white ghosts against the blue sky. But you have to pay for this beauty. You have to climb 768 narrow stone steps inside the spiral staircase. This is a path where every step echoes for centuries, and the walls seem to whisper the stories of those who climbed here hundreds of years ago. Heart of the temple. Inside the cathedral lives another legend, its organ. This is the heart of the temple, which was once destroyed by iconoclasts but revived at the end of the 16th century. It is known that in 1763 the hands of the young Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart touched these keys. They say that the sounds of this organ have a special frequency. They are able to make not only the glass in the stained glass windows tremble, but also the human soul itself, filling it with an incomprehensible thrill. Only in 1844 did work resume. The masters of the 19th century not only completed the cathedral, but also added another 10 meters of height to it above the medieval plan. On May 31, 1890, the cross finally shone over Ulm. Today, the last stage of the climb is a spiral staircase so narrow that there is barely enough space for one person there. This is a path through the heart of a brick church, where the facades are built of red clay and the spire is made of elegant sandstone. Brick sole and stone crown. As already mentioned, the main walls of the nave and choir are actually built of red brick, while the towers and lace spires are carved from noble sandstone brought from the Olgau. Ulm Cathedral is considered one of the largest brick buildings in the world. This combination of strong earthen bricks and a fragile stone spire that shoots into the sky creates a unique architectural contrast. Inside, the cathedral holds treasures that miraculously survived the wars of religion. Here you will see the choir stalls of the 15th century, a real masterpiece of oak, where hundreds of busts are carved, and the unique altar triptych of the Holy Family. But the most amazing thing is the stained glass windows. The 5 windows of the apse, dating from the 14th century, still paint the interior with biblical scenes, just as they did 500 years ago. Gargoyle symbolism, guardians of the threshold. If you look closely at the bizarre gargoyles that adorn the facades, you will notice among them not only demons, but also figures that resemble the sinners of the time, greedy merchants and drunkards. The myth says that at night these stone monsters come to life and descend to the Danube to drink water. But woe to the traveler who meets their gaze in the moonlight. They say that such a person will forever lose his peace and begin to dream of heights, until he returns to the cathedral to remain in its shadow forever. Voice of the tower, Gloriosa and the Black Bell. 13 bells live at the top of the tower, each with its own character. The main bell, called Gloriosa, weighs several tons and fills the city with a thick, velvety sound. Separate bells serve to mark the time. The Leichenglocke announces the quarter hour, and the Dominica bell announces every hour. But there is one special one among them, the Schwarzglocke, or Black Bell. This is the oldest inhabitant of the tower. It is the only one that is never touched by electronics. Only once a year, on the so-called Shrove Monday, is it rung manually. This sound is a direct link to the Middle Ages, the voice of history itself, heard only by the chosen ones. Einstein, Mozart and the Beggar. Ulm Cathedral is a meeting place for great names. In 1763, a young Mozart sat at its organ. At that time, it was the largest organ in the world, and its sound under the cathedral's vaults was so impressive that it had to be reconstructed in the 20th century to tame the incredible acoustics and echoes. However, there is another touching story in the cathedral. Under the main organ stands a statue of the prophet Jeremiah. The money for its installation in 1877 was donated by the city's Jewish community, among whom was Hermann Einstein, the father of the future genius Albert Einstein. This is a symbol of the fact that the cathedral has always been a matter for the whole city, regardless of faith or origin. And modern sculptures such as Ernst Barlach's Beggar or the new bizarre gargoyles on the facade show that this temple continues to live and absorb new eras. Mozart's Riddle of the Sun. When the young Mozart played the cathedral organ, witnesses described a strange phenomenon. It is said that the sounds of the main organ pipes made the stained glass windows glow even on a cloudy day, and dust in the rays of light gathered into strange geometric shapes. There is a belief that Mozart found a lost note in the cathedral which resonates with the frequency of the universe itself. Some believe that this note is still recorded in the vibrations of the walls, and if you are lucky enough to be in the temple in complete silence, you can hear a quiet hum. This is the cathedral continuing its endless symphony. Survival Mysticism, Island in the Fire. One of the greatest mysteries of Ulm Cathedral is its fate during World War II. In 1944, the city of Ulm was practically wiped off the face of the earth by devastating bombing. Almost all the buildings around the cathedral turned into ashes and ruins. However, the cathedral itself remained standing intact and unharmed, as if surrounded by an invisible shield. Skeptics remember March 1, 1945. Then a 500-kilogram bomb pierced the roof and fell directly into the choir hall of the cathedral, but did not explode. It only deformed the steel structures, remaining a mute witness to the miracle. Believers call it a miracle of God, historians a coincidence or a guide for pilots. But local legends tell of the Angel of Ulm, who spread his wings over the spire on that terrible night, diverting fire from the holy walls. This surviving vertical amidst the scorched earth became a symbol for the city's residents that even in the darkest times, there is something eternal that cannot be destroyed. The legend of the Ulm Sparrow. You can't talk about this cathedral without mentioning a little bird. They say that when the cathedral was being built, there was a problem: how to carry huge beams through the narrow city gates. The builders were about to demolish part of the wall until they saw a sparrow building a nest. The bird was holding a straw knot across its beak, but lengthwise, which allowed it to crawl into narrow gaps. The builders understood the hint, turned the beams lengthwise, and construction continued. Since then, the Ulm Sparrow has become an unofficial symbol of the city, and its figurine can be found on the roof of the cathedral as a reminder: Even the smallest creature can give wise advice to great masters. The story of the Danube Mermaid under the foundation. There is an old legend that while laying the foundation, the builders came across an underground lake that connects to the Danube. They say that the spirit of the river lives there, a mermaid, who was angry at the construction of such a heavy structure. To prevent it from washing away the cathedral, the craftsmen supposedly walled up a silver fish in one of the columns. Locals believe that as long as the fish is in place, the Danube will not take the cathedral underground. Gaussian solar calendar. Few people know, but there are points in the cathedral through which rays fall on certain sculptures on the days of the solstice. It is said that the great mathematician Carl Friedrich Gauss used the cathedral spire as a triangulation point for his geodetic measurements. The spire was so high and accurate that it served as an ideal reference point for mapping the entire southern Germany. The legend of the Stairway to Heaven and the Devil. There is a dark myth that when the number of steps exceeded 500, the devil tried to confuse people so that they would never reach the top. He made the stairs spiral and so narrow that a person could not turn around and could only see the wall in front of him. That is why on the last levels in the third gallery people often experience a panic attack or disorientation. They say it is the breath of the enemy in a narrow space. Modernity, the light of solidarity. Today, Ulm Cathedral continues to be not only an architectural landmark but also a moral compass. Since the end of February 2022, when a great war came to Ukrainian soil, this stone giant has spoken the language of light. Every evening, its walls are illuminated in the colors of the Ukrainian flag, blue and yellow. The square in front of the cathedral has become a place of strength for Ukrainians who, far from home, hold rallies against aggression. This is extremely symbolic. The cathedral, which withstood the fire of the past war, has today become a wall of support for those who are fighting for their freedom now. Ulm's greatness is now not only in the meters of its spire, but also in the depth of its solidarity. Stone Prayer of the Danube. Ulm Cathedral is more than sandstone and glass. It is a symbol that true greatness is not afraid of time. It can wait 500 years, it can stand in the middle of fire, it can rise above the clouds, reminding us how small we are and at the same time how powerful we are in our aspirations. It teaches us patience, to wait 500 years to stand in the middle of fire and rise above the clouds. When you stand at its foot, feeling the cold of the sandstone and the wind from the Danube, you understand, as long as this spire cuts the sky, the world has hope. This is a story about how ordinary people challenged eternity and won. As long as this spire cuts the sky, the world has hope that light will always find a way through the darkest night. This is a stone story about patience, about miracles, and that a true masterpiece is always a dialogue between man and eternity. Thanks for watching, my friend. Don't forget to watch our other videos and learn new mysteries. We have a lot more interesting things in store for you.